My name is Grace Myers. I'm 36 years old. At 16, in the middle of a cold November downpour, my parents threw me out for being pregnant. One suitcase. My mother pointing to the door, telling me I no longer existed to them. That night, they signed documents cutting me out of the family completely, me and any child I might ever have. I kept those documents. I kept every reminder. For 20 years, I lived like a ghost while they told everyone I'd moved overseas, protecting their polished image by burying the daughter they discarded. And then, last week, they appeared on my doorstep, desperate smiles, rehearsed warmth, insisting on meeting the grandson they'd been bragging about to 200 of their most influential friends. They offered me $250,000. What they didn't know was that the grandson they'd promised everyone didn't exist. And what they were about to discover would unravel everything they'd spent 50 years building. Portland, Oregon. November 2004. I was 16, a sophomore at St. Catherine's Academy, the youngest child of Richard and Diane Myers. On the surface, we looked flawless. My father ran a thriving real estate law firm downtown, Myers and Associates, founded in 1987. My mother had chaired the PDA for 4 straight years. Every Sunday, we occupied the front pew at Grace Fellowship Church, dressed in carefully coordinated outfits she laid out the night before. But every household has its ranking system. I understood mine early. Nathan, my oldest sibling, was 22 and in his 3rd year of dental school, the golden child, destined to carry on the Myers legacy. Carolyn, 20, was training to be a teacher, the beautiful, obedient daughter who never challenged anything. And then there was me. My mother once referred to me as the surprise. She was 34 when I was born, 6 years after she thought she was done having children. I don't think she ever forgave me for rearranging her plans. The signs weren't loud, but they were constant. The framed family portraits in our living room somehow never included my school pictures. At dinner, conversation revolved around Nathan's clinical rotations or Carolyn's student teaching. If I mentioned making honor roll, my father would give a brief nod and say, "That's nice, Grace," before shifting the focus back to Nathan. I learned to shrink myself, to want less, to need less. My father loved repeating one line at family gatherings. It takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. I didn't realize then how those words would echo through my life, or that I would become the 5 minutes he feared. I met Marcus Webb at the downtown public library. It sounds ordinary, but for me, that place was a refuge. No comparisons. No expectations. I went 3 afternoons a week, supposedly to study, but really just to breathe. Marcus went to Jefferson High, the public school my parents acted like didn't exist. He was 17, worked part-time at his uncle's auto repair shop, and had the gentlest eyes I'd ever seen. One afternoon in October, after my mother forgot to pick me up from school for the 3rd time that month, he found me crying between the biography shelves. "Hey," he said softly, sitting across from me. "Are you okay?" No one had asked me that in a long time. We dated in secret for 2 months. He was patient, kind, and made me feel seen, like I mattered, like I wouldn't be forgotten. October 28, 2004. I was in the bathroom of a gas station 3 miles from school, staring at a pregnancy test. 2 pink lines. My hands shook so hard I thought I'd drop it. When I told Marcus, he didn't panic. He didn't run. He took my hands and said, "We'll figure it out together, Grace. You're not alone." I wanted to believe him. Part of me did. But I knew my parents. I knew what they valued. And I knew their first question wouldn't be, "Are you okay?" It would be, "What will people say?" I chose Sunday dinner to tell them. I didn't know it would be the last meal I'd ever have in that house. Sunday, November 14th, 2004. 7:32 p.m. The roast beef was dry. I remember because I kept staring at it, trying to gather the courage to speak while my father complained about a property dispute and my mother discussed the guest list for the church Christmas gala. I have something to say. Silence fell instantly. 4 faces turned toward me. My parents, Nathan home for the weekend, Carolyn visiting from college. I'm 8 weeks pregnant. My mother's fork hit her plate with a sharp clang. My father remained perfectly still. Who is the father? His voice was cold. Someone from St. Catherine's? A family we know? His name is Marcus Webb. He goes to Jefferson High. He works at Jefferson. My mother's face drained of color. You've been seeing a boy from the public school? He's a good person, Mom. My father cut me off. What does his father do? He lives with his uncle. His uncle owns an auto shop. The silence lasted 11 seconds. I counted. Then my father stood. You will not keep it. Richard, my mother began. She will not destroy everything we've built. He looked at me like I was an inconvenience that needed removing. If you keep that baby, you are no longer part of this family. By 9:15 p.m., I was on the front porch with one suitcase, rain soaking through my sweater. My mother opened the door and pointed outside. Not my father. My mother. Nathan and Carolyn watched from an upstairs window. Neither came down. I called Marcus from a payphone at the gas station on Mulberry Street. My fingers trembled so badly, I could barely dial. He answered on the second ring. Grace? What's wrong? They kicked me out. 20 minutes later, his uncle's truck screeched into the parking lot. Marcus jumped out before it fully stopped, wrapped me in his jacket, and held me while I cried. I've got you, he whispered. I've got you. We had no strategy. Just $300, an unreliable truck, and nowhere to go. Margaret Torres saved us. She lived 3 houses down from my parents. 62 years old. Retired teacher. The only neighbor who didn't treat my father like he owned the street. She'd seen me standing in the rain. She'd watched long enough to understand. You can stay with me, she said when I knocked on her door close to 10 p.m. as long as you need. We stayed 2 weeks in her spare room before Marcus found us a studio apartment in Seattle, $425 a month, above a laundromat that smelled like bleach and faded hope. The night they expelled me, my parents had their lawyer draft documents. I know because 3 days later my father mailed me a certified copy. Signature required, like I was signing a business deal. It stated that Grace Elizabeth Myers relinquished all inheritance rights and that the Myers family held no legal or moral responsibility for her or any child she bore. I kept that document. I've kept it for 20 years. Lily Grace Myers Webb was born July 6, 2005, at Harborview Medical Center in Seattle. 7 pounds 4 ounces. 10 fingers. 10 toes. Her father's brown eyes. My stubborn chin. She entered the world screaming, and I remember thinking, good. Be loud. Don't let anyone shrink you. The first 5 years were survival. Marcus worked double shifts at a repair shop in Ballard while I earned my GED, then took community college classes, 2 at a time, whatever I could handle around Lily. We lived on ramen and day-old bakery bread. I sewed patches onto worn clothes to stretch every dollar. I mailed my parents a birth announcement. Nothing. A photo on her first birthday. Silence. After her second, I stopped trying. Marcus and I always said we'd marry someday, when we could afford a real wedding, when life slowed down. Someday kept moving further away. March 15, 2010. A delivery truck ran a red light on Aurora Avenue. Marcus was driving home from a night shift. The officer at my door said he died instantly. He was 26. Lily was 4. His life insurance policy paid $12,000. That was the total value placed on 26 years of kindness. At 22, I was a widow in everything but paperwork, a single mother with $12,000 and no one to call. I could have collapsed then. I didn't. While Marcus was alive, I'd started small interior design jobs, helping neighbors decorate, staging homes for real estate agents willing to gamble on a young mom without credentials. People said I had an eye for it, a talent for turning small spaces into something that felt like home. After he died, I worked like survival depended on it because it did. In 2012, I met Eleanor Vance at a design workshop at Seattle Central College. 52. Recently retired creative director of a major firm. Looking for something meaningful. She chose me. You have real talent, she told me after reviewing my portfolio. Unrefined, but genuine. Let me help you develop it. In 2014, with her mentorship and a $50,000 SBA loan, approved on my third attempt, I launched Hearth Home Interiors. Our first office was basically a converted closet in a shared workspace. By 2018, we had 8 employees and $1.2 million in revenue. In 2022, Seattle Met magazine featured my story, from teen mother to CEO. The journalist spent 3 days interviewing me about getting pregnant at 16, being cut off, losing Marcus, building something from nothing. I told her everything except my parents' names. Not for their sake, for Lily's. By 2024, we had 22 employees, $4.2 million in revenue, a corner office overlooking Capitol Hill. Lily was 19, a psychology sophomore at the University of Washington. Brilliant. Strong. Everything I had hoped she'd be. 20 years passed without a word from the Myers family. Until last week. Tuesday, November 5th, 2024. 6:47 p.m. I had just returned from meeting a tech executive renovating her Mercer Island waterfront home, an $800,000 contract. My mind was still on fabric swatches and lighting plans when I turned onto my street and saw the car. A black Mercedes-Benz S-Class. Oregon plates. I parked and gripped the steering wheel for a full minute, staring at the 2 figures at my front door. The man's hair was gray now, his shoulders slightly bent. The woman stood rigid as ever, posture flawless, as if bracing against imperfection itself. Richard and Diane Myers. My parents. I hadn't seen them in 20 years. For a moment, I considered driving away, checking into a hotel, pretending none of it was happening. But I was 36. I owned my company. I had built a life without them. I stepped out of the car and walked toward them. My father spoke first. "Grace, you look..." His eyes scanned my coat, my bag, my house. "Well, what are you doing here?" My mother stepped closer. "We know about your son, Grace. We know you have a son." I blinked. "What?" "We'd like to meet him," my father said. "We want to reconnect as a family." The absurdity nearly made me laugh. 2 decades of silence, and now they wanted a grandson they'd never cared to know. A grandson who didn't exist. I let them inside. I'm still not sure why. My father sat in my living room like he was assessing real estate, studying the floors, the built-ins, the artwork. My mother perched on the edge of the sofa, hands folded neatly. "Your anniversary," I said. "That's why you're here." 50 years, my father replied. November 15th. We're hosting a celebration at the Heathman Hotel. 200 guests. The mayor, Pastor Harrison, the Rotary Board. And this concerns me how. My parents exchanged a glance. "There have been questions," my mother said carefully. "About you." "About what happened?" "People remember we had a 3rd child," my father added. "They've asked where you went." "We said you moved abroad." "But the questions are becoming persistent. So, you need me to show up. Prove the family is intact." "We need your son," my mother said firmly. "We've spoken about him." "About our grandson. He should be present, the next generation of the Myers name." The air went still. "Who told you I have a son?" "We read the magazine article," my father said dismissively. "It mentioned your child, your business. You've done better than we anticipated." Better than we anticipated. As if my entire existence had been an exam. "And if I decline?" His jaw tightened. "Let's not complicate this." He opened his briefcase and placed a blank check on my coffee table. "We're prepared to compensate you. $250,000. Bring your son to the event. Stay 3 hours. Take photographs. Then return to your life." I stared at the check. Then at my mother, nodding as though this was perfectly reasonable. $250,000, I repeated. "That's the price of 20 years? We'll also reinstate you into the family trust," my mother added softly. "The estate is valued at $3.8 million. You'd receive an equal share." I thought of that studio above the laundromat, of Lily sleeping in a playpen behind a cafe counter because childcare was too expensive, of building everything from nothing while they erased me. And if I refuse? My father's voice sharpened. We prefer not to approach your son directly, but if necessary, we will. He deserves to understand his heritage. It was a threat, wrapped in civility. You want to contact my child, I said carefully, and tell them your version of history. We want to be a family again, my mother said gently. Isn't that what you always wanted? Before I could answer, footsteps echoed from the stairs. Mom, is everything okay? I heard voices. Lily reached the bottom step, psychology textbook in hand. Sweatpants. University of Washington hoodie. Hair in a messy ponytail. My mother stood abruptly, her expression shifting from confusion to calculation to something close to panic. Who is this? This is Lily, I said, stepping slightly in front of her. My daughter. Your granddaughter. Daughter? My father's voice cracked. But the article, it said child, I replied. You filled in the rest. Lily looked between us, comprehension settling in. These are them, she said quietly. The grandparents who threw you out when you were pregnant with me? My mother flinched. It wasn't that simple. Which part wasn't simple? Lily folded her arms. The part where you forced a 16-year-old into the rain? Or the part where you pretended she didn't exist for 20 years? Young lady, my father began. I'm not your young lady. I'm the grandchild you didn't want. The one you tried to erase. Her voice was steady, though her hands trembled. I know everything. Mom told me about the letter, the inheritance papers, the stories you told your friends about her moving overseas. My parents sat frozen. Lily turned to me. They came here too. Here for grandson, weren't you? Lily finished, her voice sharp. Someone you could parade around? Yes, I answered quietly. She faced them again, a thin, icy smile on her lips.
Surprise.
My father recovered before my mother did. I could see him recalculating, the attorney in him adjusting to new information. A granddaughter, he said carefully. That's workable. We can revise the story. As what? Lily cut in. The hidden granddaughter you've kept secret for 19 years? The child of the teenage daughter you threw away. We could explain that you were studying overseas, my mother said, her tone almost pleading now. And that you've just returned. A beautiful reunion. I was born in Seattle, Lily replied flatly. I've never even left the country. I'm a sophomore at UW. She let out a short laugh without humor. Do you hear yourselves? You expect me to lie to 200 people about my entire life. The celebration is November 15th, my father said, glancing at his watch as if the schedule mattered more than the truth. 10 days from now. We need your answer by the 10th. I stood. You should go. Grace. I'll think about what you've said, I interrupted. But not tonight. Not with Lily here. My mother gathered her purse and headed for the door. Before stepping out, she turned back. This is a chance to heal, Grace. To leave the past behind. Don't let old pain ruin your future. I watched them walk to their Mercedes. My father opened the passenger door for my mother the same way he always had, like this was just another polished evening. The car disappeared around the corner. You're not actually considering it, are you? Lily asked. I looked at my daughter, strong, intelligent, the very person they'd tried to erase before she was born. No, I said. But I'm not finished with them. That night, after Lily went upstairs, I pulled a fireproof lockbox from the back of my closet. I hadn't opened it in years. Inside were the papers that erased me. The notarized disinheritance letter dated November 14th, 2004. Signed by Richard Allen Myers and Diane Elizabeth Myers. Witnessed by a notary named Harold Brennan. I remembered receiving it by certified mail, required to sign for it, as if my father wanted proof that I understood how final it was. 3 pages of airtight legal language stating that Grace Elizabeth Myers relinquished all claims to the Myers estate and that the family bore no legal or moral responsibility to her or any dependents thereof. Any dependents thereof. Lily reduced to 3 cold words. Erased before she even existed. I photographed each page, uploaded them to cloud storage, created backups. Mom, I looked up. Lily stood in the doorway, arms wrapped around herself. I couldn't sleep. She sat beside me on the bed, staring at the papers spread across the blanket. "Is that it?" she asked softly. "Yes." She lifted the first page and read slowly. When she finished, her eyes shone, but she refused to let tears fall. "They really did it," she whispered. "They just cut you out like you were nothing." "They did. What are you going to do with this?" I looked at the proof of 20 years of calculated cruelty. "I don't know yet," I admitted. "But whatever I decide, they won't be able to pretend anymore." She nodded slowly. "I might have an idea." The next morning, I made a call I hadn't made in over a year. Margaret Torres answered on the third ring. "Grace?" "Sweetheart." "Mrs. Torres," I said, smiling despite everything. "I hope I'm not calling too early." "At my age, early is flexible," she replied. "What's wrong?" I told her everything. The invented grandson, the anniversary party, the money. She was silent for a moment. 20 years, she finally said. "And they haven't changed." "I need to ask you something," I said. That night. November 14th, 2004. "I remember it like it was yesterday," she said, her voice firming. "You standing in the rain. That little suitcase. Their car driving away. I watched from my window. I should have come out sooner. I've regretted it ever since." "Do you still have your old security footage?" A pause. "I never delete anything. Habit from teaching. Let me look." 20 minutes later, she emailed me a grainy but unmistakable image. A 16-year-old girl standing alone on a porch in the rain. Timestamp: 9:17 p.m., November 14th, 2004. The house number partially visible. "That's you," she said when I called her back. "The night they threw you out. Would you be willing to verify this officially?" "I've been waiting 20 years for someone to ask," she said fiercely. "Whatever you need." 2 documents. 1 witness. Now I needed strategy. That evening, I reread the Seattle Met article. Still online. Shared over 12,000 times since March 2022. Rebecca Heng had titled it "From Teen Mom to Design CEO, Grace Myers' Story." 2,500 words about loss, resilience, and rebuilding. I'd been careful. Honest but selective. I mentioned estrangement without names. Early motherhood without identifying who cast me out. Not to protect them. To protect Lily. Scrolling through the comments, one caught my eye. Posted 2 weeks ago. "Does anyone know if she's related to the Myers family in Portland? The law firm?" Someone at my church mentioned it. So that's how they found me. My phone rang. "Eleanor, I heard your parents resurfaced," she said. "Seattle." I replied dryly. "Nothing stays quiet. What do you need?" "Perspective. You've spent 20 years proving who you are without them," she said. "Don't let 3 hours at their party undo that." She was right, but I was thinking beyond 3 hours. Thursday, November 7th, 3:42 p.m. An Oregon number flashed on my screen. "Grace, it's Nathan." I hadn't heard my brother's voice in 2 decades. It sounded older. Tired. "I know I don't deserve to call," he said. "But there are things you should know." "Then tell me." The grandson story, that was Mom. She skimmed the article. Saw a child and successful business and invented the rest. A brilliant grandson carrying the Myers legacy. I closed my eyes. "They've been telling church friends, Rotary members," he continued. "They built an entire narrative around him." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I was a coward," he said, voice breaking. "I should have come downstairs that night. I should have stopped it. Caroline and I have talked about it for years. We were wrong." He told me about the unspoken rules in our house. About approval being currency. About fear of stepping out of line. "Caroline has 2 kids now," he added. "She doesn't want them growing up like we did." "Why didn't you call before?" "I tried 5 years ago," he admitted. "I found your number. Dialed it a dozen times. But if I spoke to you, I'd have to admit what I let happen." "What changed?" "Watching them show up at your house demanding a grandson. Trying to buy you." He exhaled. "If I stay silent now, I fail you twice." Then he added something else. "There's going to be a family segment at the party. Live streamed on the church Facebook page. Pastor Harrison's idea. A show of unity. A live stream. 200 guests. Countless viewers online. Thank you, I said. What are you going to do? I'm starting to see it clearly. Friday morning, my father called. We're out of time, he said. $250,000. Full reinstatement. Final offer. I spoke to Nathan. Silence. He told me about the imaginary grandson. We may have embellished. You invented a person. His tone hardened. I don't appreciate your attitude. You're not offering me anything, I said calmly. You're trying to buy your way out of a lie. You destroyed this family, he snapped. You brought shame. I was 16. I was scared. I needed my parents. You will never have another chance to be part of this family. You said that 20 years ago, I replied. I built something better without you. He hung up. 1 week. 200 guests. A live stream. That evening, I sat at the dining table with Lily and Eleanor. They want you smiling for photos, Eleanor said. Validating 20 years of fiction. They've always treated you like something to manage, Lily added. Not someone to love. I'm going, I said. Lily stared at me. Mom. Not to give them what they want. To take back what's mine. I showed them the documents. The footage. The article. They've controlled my story for 2 decades, I said. I'm done disappearing. You want to tell the truth on their stage, Eleanor said. Yes. I'm coming, Lily said firmly. They need to see me, not their imaginary grandson. I squeezed her hand. Are you sure? I've lived with their choice my entire life. I'm sure. I called Nathan. Will you stand with me? Yes. Don't warn them. I won't. Saturday, November 15th, 2024. 6:47 p.m. The Crystal Ballroom at the Heathman Hotel was exactly what they would choose. Crystal chandeliers. Crisp white linens. Floral arrangements that probably cost more than my first month's rent in Seattle. 200 guests in formal wear, sipping champagne. Lily stood beside me in a navy dress, elegant and simple. I wore black. Clean lines. Unapologetic. You okay? She whispered. I'm about to interrupt my parents' 50th anniversary to expose 20 years of lies, I said. I'm terrified. That's not what I meant. I looked at her. This remarkable young woman who had turned rejection into strength. Yes, I said. I'm okay. We walked in. At the far end of the room, on a raised platform, stood Richard and Diane Myers. My mother in champagne silk. My father in navy, radiating confidence. They hadn't seen us yet. My father spoke into the microphone. 50 years of marriage has taught me that family is everything. Diane and I have built our lives around that truth. Applause. Smiles. The live stream camera blinking red. My mother saw me first. Her smile froze. My father followed her gaze and faltered mid-sentence. Whispers rippled. That's her from the magazine. I thought she lived in Europe. I started toward the stage. The crowd shifted, making space. Lily walked beside me, steady. Nathan and Carolyn stood off to the side. They didn't intervene. Grace, my father said into the microphone, voice tight. What a surprise. I climbed the steps. The live stream camera turned, following me. 200 faces stared up. Staring at me, along with however many were watching through the live stream. Before he could react, I gently took the microphone from his hand. Good evening, I said, turning to the crowd. My name is Grace Myers. Some of you may not recognize me, and that's not an accident. I'm Richard and Diane's youngest daughter. I let that settle. The one you were told moved to Europe 20 years ago. The silence in the ballroom became suffocating. I didn't move overseas. I continued evenly. On November 14th, 2004, 20 years ago tomorrow, my parents found out I was 16 and pregnant. That same night, they forced me out of their home. They had legal papers drawn up disowning me. I was told I was no longer their daughter. A sharp gasp cut through the room. On the monitor beside the stage, the live stream comments were flying by too fast to read. For 2 decades, they told everyone I'd gone abroad. For 2 decades, they acted as if I didn't exist. I reached into my bag and held up the notarized letter. This is the document my father sent me 3 days later. It states that I surrendered all inheritance rights and that the Myers family holds no legal or moral responsibility toward me or, quote, any dependents thereof. I lifted it closer to the camera so the words were visible. That dependent? That's my daughter, Lily. I gestured to where she stood near the stage. Your granddaughter. The grandson you've been describing to your friends for months isn't real. You created him after skimming a magazine article you didn't bother to read. My father reached for the microphone. Grace, this is not appropriate. When is it appropriate, Dad? I kept the mic just out of reach. When do we tell the truth? I faced the audience again. Last week, they came to my home and offered me $250,000 to bring a fictional grandson to this event. $250,000 to make their lie believable. I scanned the faces in the crowd. I'm not here for money. I'm here because I refuse to be erased. Pastor Harrison stepped forward. Richard, is this accurate? My father's mouth opened, but no answer came. My mother's composure shattered. Tears streaked down her carefully applied makeup. Richard, the pastor repeated, voice firm. Is it true? Every eye in the room fixed on him. I watched him search for a way to reshape reality, to soften it, to make it presentable. It was a complicated time, he finally said. We made decisions. You put me out in the rain because I was pregnant, I said calmly. Because protecting your image mattered more than protecting your child. Nathan stepped onto the stage. Carolyn followed. They stood beside me. She's telling the truth, Nathan said clearly. Caroline and I were there. We watched from upstairs while our parents forced our 16-year-old sister outside. We said nothing. That's on us. The murmurs swelled into open noise. Phones were out. People were recording. Mayor Harold Simmons was already edging toward the exit. Mrs. Torres, I called, pointing toward the back. Margaret Torres stood slowly, shoulders squared. She lived 3 houses down from us 20 years ago, I said. She saw everything. She has time-stamped photos. I watched that child stand alone in the rain, Mrs. Torres said, voice unwavering. I took her in, and not once did her parents come looking. The live-stream comment feed was erupting. I turned back to my father and placed the microphone into his hand. I didn't come here to ruin you, I said quietly, so only those on stage could hear. I came so I would never be invisible again. Then I addressed the room once more. I don't want sympathy. 20 years ago, I left with nothing. Today, I run a design firm in Seattle with 22 employees and over $4 million in annual revenue. My daughter is a sophomore at the University of Washington. We build our lives without any help from the Myers family. I looked directly into the camera lens. I'm not seeking revenge. I'm here because my parents tried to purchase my silence. And they need to face what they did, not privately, but in front of the community they value so highly. Lily stepped onto the platform and took my hand. I'm Lily, she said into the microphone. The granddaughter they never wanted. Her voice trembled, but she didn't falter.
I'm 19.
I've known my entire life that my grandparents chose their reputation over my mom, and over me. You could have been part of my childhood. My birthdays. My graduations. You chose not to. Her voice cracked, but she pushed through. And now you don't get to pretend that was anyone else's fault. She handed the microphone back and stepped down. I followed her. Behind us, the ballroom dissolved into chaos. At the doorway, I turned one last time. One more thing, I called out. The noise quieted just enough. I'm not suing you. I'm not fighting for inheritance. I'm keeping those papers you signed 20 years ago as a reminder, not a weapon. My father looked stunned. But understand this. If you ever spread false stories about me or my daughter again, if you attempt to contact Lily without her permission, I will release every document I have. The letter, the timestamp photos, the witnesses. I nodded toward Mrs. Torres. And now, 200 more witnesses. Eleanor appeared beside me. Ready? Yes. As we walked out into the cold November night, I heard Pastor Harrison's voice behind us. Richard.
Diane, we need to speak. Now.
Outside, the air felt sharp and clean. Mom, Lily said softly, was that the right choice? I thought about the 16-year-old girl standing alone in the rain with a suitcase and fear twisting in her chest. We told the truth, I said. We set boundaries. We let them face their own decisions. I pulled her into my arms. That's not revenge. That's accountability. What happens now? I looked up at the dark sky. Now we go home. The fallout started immediately. By midnight, clips of the live stream had been shared hundreds of times. By morning, that number had tripled. Someone uploaded it to YouTube with a dramatic title, and within a day it had tens of thousands of views. Nathan called Sunday morning with updates. Nearly 50 guests left within half an hour, he said. The mayor didn't even say goodbye. Some people actually apologized to me for believing the story about Europe. By Sunday afternoon, a brief article appeared in the Portland Herald. The tone was cautious. The comment section wasn't. What kind of parent throws out their own child? I had no idea. No one will look at that family the same way again. By Monday, my father stepped down as an elder at Grace Fellowship Church. Officially for personal reasons. Unofficially, everyone understood. By midweek, the Rotary Club announced a review of membership standards. His name was mentioned directly. Meanwhile, in Seattle, I answered emails from prospective clients. 7 new inquiries arrived that week alone from people who had connected the viral video to the profile written about me 2 years earlier. Some consequences break things apart. Others make everything clearer. This did both. Rebecca Huang called. Your video is everywhere, she said. Would you consider a follow-up? I'll think about it, I replied. Messages poured into my company inbox. Not about design, but about estrangement, about resilience, about finally speaking up. Your story made me call my sister after 10 years. I'm a teen mom too. Thank you. You showed me that success doesn't require permission. A week later, Nathan and Carolyn came to visit. We sat in my living room for 6 hours. They met Lily properly. Their children played in my backyard. We talked about the past without pretending it hadn't happened. I'm sorry, Nathan said. I know it's not enough. It's a beginning, I answered. Lily watched quietly, seeing what extended family could look like. Messy, imperfect, but real. Then one evening my phone rang. Oregon number. My mother. Grace, she said, her voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. I'm not calling to ask for forgiveness. I don't even know how to begin. Then why call? Silence stretched. I watched the video, she whispered. Over and over. I kept looking at your face. Trying to see the daughter I put out in the rain.
I didn't speak.
Your father isn't handling this well. The church, his colleagues. Everyone looks at him differently now. I didn't do this to punish you, I said. I know, she replied softly. You did it because we left you no other choice. Why did you really call? Another long pause. Because I hadn't heard your voice in 20 years. And I realized I might never hear it again. And because my granddaughter stood in front of 200 people and said she knew we didn't want her. Her voice broke. I couldn't breathe. I'm not ready to forgive you, I said honestly. Maybe I never will. But I won't hang up. That's more than I deserve.
Yes.
It is. We stayed on the line in silence before saying goodbye. Thanksgiving that year, my dining table seated 12. Lily on one side. Eleanor on the other. Mrs. Torres folding napkins with my nephew. Nathan carving turkey. Carolyn's daughters arguing over candles. My parents weren't there. Maybe they never would be. But as I looked around that table, I realized something. For years, I mourned a family that never truly chose me. Now I was surrounded by people who did. Lily stood with a folded piece of paper. When I was little, she began, I asked why I didn't have grandparents like other kids. Mom always told me the truth, that they made a choice, and it wasn't about me. She looked at me. I understand that now. Everything I am is because you refused to let their decision define us. She raised her glass. to the family we create. We all drank. Later, standing at the kitchen window, Lily came beside me. You okay? I looked at the life built from what once felt like ashes. Yeah, I said. I am. 20 years ago, I stood in the rain believing everything was over. I was wrong. I had Marcus for the time I was given with him. I had Mrs. Torres, who opened her door without hesitation. I had Eleanor, who saw possibility. I had Lily, who chose strength over bitterness. And eventually, I had myself, the version who stopped asking for permission to exist. If your family makes you feel small, if your worth feels tied to their approval, I understand. But here's what I know now. You don't need validation to have value. Boundaries aren't revenge. They're protection. And sometimes the family you build is stronger than the one you were born into. My parents haven't truly apologized.
My father barely speaks.
My mother calls sometimes, and I answer when I can. Nathan and Carolyn are trying. But I'm not waiting for anyone to change. I'm living the life I built. The life I earned. The life that belongs to me. It's not a perfect ending. It's a real one. And real endings don't need applause. They just need truth. Thank you for listening. If this story resonated with you, share it, like, subscribe, and explore more stories like this. Because everyone deserves to be seen.